Yo, this is P-Town's finest, representing the NEP, D. Stoudemire, and y'all know what we talking about. No one's ready to deal with us.
This is Evan Turner, your Portland Trailblazers, and you're listening to the Rip City Report with Casey Holdahl and Joe Freeman.
Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to another edition of the Rip City Report. I am Joe Freeman of The Oregonian. He is Casey Holdahl of Trailblazers.com.
Greetings, everybody. Happy March to everybody out there.
Yes, it is
so long February.
eternal.
Yeah, we're getting close to the springtime, huh?
Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing all right.
Excellent.
Yeah. I took yesterday and basically
Marinated?
I just sat on the couch for the entire day.
Excellent.
Ate way too much food. Ate a lot of candy as well. And
Did you leave some nice butt imprints on the couch?
you know, our couch is so old. We really need a new couch.
Come on, step up.
We need to get a new one. You couldn't see any butt imprints over all of the legacy
Butt
stains
stations?
from dogs and cats and
yeah.
vomit from dogs and cats and so on and so forth. So
That's a tough one. The pets and the couches and the furniture.
yeah. It's always a debate about what's the best way to go, and I just don't have the discipline to keep pets off of furniture. So
They rule the house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Though we only have one right now, anyways, and he's hella old. So
Yeah, Andre's still living
yeah.
large.
Well, I don't know about large, but he's still living.
He's kind of a girthy cat.
Yeah, he is. Which I mean, I don't think that's doing him any favors in his senior days here.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, he's like large, so he's living large.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we want to talk from a literal perspective.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Figuratively, he is not living large. Absolutely.
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to be back and nice to have you back. We haven't done a podcast since the All-Star break, so we thought we would talk a little of a deadline recap, get into the news of the day, which is Ed Davis's injury, and how the Blazers will fill in for them, answer your questions, and more as we move forward. But before I do, of course, he is Casey Holdahl. Please give him a follow on Twitter at @chold, and even more, access his content at blazers.com/forwardcenter. And you can give me a follow on Twitter at Blazer Freeman. And check out mine and my colleagues' stuff at OregonLive.com/blazers. If you subscribe to us on whatever platform, Stitcher, iTunes,
SoundCloud.
if you watch
you
on
wait
YouTube,
for one of your friends to
SoundCloud,
tell you that there's a new podcast you should listen to.
yeah, just give us a review, because it helps us shape the show. And on iTunes, even if you don't want to leave a comment or let us know what you think, just give us a star review. It's pretty simple to do. Again, we keep tabs on it. And it's been a couple weeks since we got one, so it'll make us feel good one way or the other, I guess. Or bad, depending on if you don't like it.
No, and no, they're all good reviews.
That's true, they
Yeah.
are.
No, we take them all to heart.
All right. Well, we could just talk Oscars the whole time, too. We could talk movies.
No.
Or we could talk Russia. I mean, that's dominating the airwaves. Or we could talk something else that's going on that's out there. Oscars, Russia.
Are people still talking about the Oscars, though, Joe? I mean,
No, not really.
Yeah, that's done.
That's a couple days old.
Yeah, exactly.
It was pretty amazing, though, watching it live.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah. I still think Warren Beatty threw, what's-her-name, Faye Dunaway under the bus. He just handed her the card and was like, you deal with this.
Yeah. I mean, you know, they all kind of got
It's a tough spot.
screwed over. Yeah, exactly.
Tough spot.
I don't know why someone would. I mean, I assume they probably get paid, so I guess that's part of it. And I don't know if you have to do the bidding of the Academy to stay in the union.
Good graces.
But I mean, like I was talking to my wife about this the other day. I don't know, one, if you weren't up for an award, I don't know why you would go. And two, it was more a discussion of the after party. Like, what? You're a celebrity. Like you're an A-lister 365 days out of the year. Why are you going to an after party for the Oscars? Like, you just sat for 5 hours. Like, you really need to go sit with the same people you just sat with for 5 hours? And
I think you guys
it's
are
like,
looking at
are
it
they
wrong.
that much fun?
I think it's like a celebration of your job, and so the whole day, in theory, should be a party for you and your colleagues in your industry.
And that's,
so.
but I guess what I'm saying is, like, the nature of celebrity, that's always what it is.
That's your life,
You know,
yeah.
like, exactly. It's like, what would be like what's a party that an A-lister goes to? It's like, oh man, that was a great party. I mean, because I assume they're all great.
What about like Dame? Would he go to the ESPYs? I mean, you or I
he has
wouldn't
gone
work.
before.
Yeah, so I bet he likes that. But he's a celebrity. His whole life is a party. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I think in sports it's a little bit different.
Think so?
Yeah, but you know, you got a point there.
I think when your industry, whatever that industry is, celebrating
Well,
its finest.
and my caveat too is I could see doing it once or twice.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. But like, if you're 80-year-old Warren Beatty How many Academy Awards you been to? Probably 50.
Yeah.
No, man, I'm good. I'm gonna stay home for that.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I mean, I started this podcast out with talking about how I sat on the couch all day yesterday. So that's kind of my MO as it is.
Okay, Oscar.
And I don't want to talk about Russia, Joe. I reading today, like I thought there was maybe something new. I was like, oh, this is going to be the one, and then I saw it, and I was like, you're not taking these guys down with that kind of stuff.
Well,
like
it's just a new guy.
It's going to have to be full on smoking gun, like video evidence broadcast in real time to take these guys down.
I will say this at this point. And then we don't want to talk about this,
no,
obviously. But at this point, if there is something, it will be found because there are some dogs out there looking for this. And they have been challenged and called out, and so they will vigorously pursue that.
Probably.
So if there is something, they'll find it. Okay, Oscars Russia, now on to news and notes.
Yeah, let's get to the basketball.
The Blazers announced late Wednesday that Ed Davis will undergo arthroscopic surgery on his left shoulder to repair an injured labrum next Tuesday. The Blazers' backup big man will miss the rest of the season. We'll talk more extensively about this after we get through news and notes. Evan Turner said he hopes to get his cast removed on Friday, perhaps as early as Friday, a step in the right direction for his soon-to-be return. Turner broke his, I guess it's the third metacarpal in his right hand on September 7th, and the original timeline offered at the time for him to return would be in 5 to 7 weeks, and I believe you said it was, 27 days since, or 24 days?
24 days, yeah. Friday would be 24 days.
Yeah, so that puts him ahead of schedule. Not necessarily, though, that he'll return soon, because you would think there'd be at least a week or two grace period afterwards, so... assuming he does get the cast off and then clears the next step, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, basically getting the cast off obviously is a step towards getting back on the court, but it is not in and of itself the final step, obviously. And especially when you didn't have surgery on it. Mm-hmm. I mean, so it's just sitting there in the cast. And, the third metacarpal is like a small bone in your hand. He's got a cast, all the way up his arm.
Atrophy.
It's obviously to immobilize it, but that, it's so long story short, Turner getting his cast off on Friday doesn't mean he's going to be playing on Saturday.
Yeah.
Not that people assume
think that,
but just for the record.
He did say when he hurt himself that he believes he's a quick healer because of his broken back when he was in college. And also he said when he does return, he doesn't need to go through practice after practice after practice. When he comes back, he's going to be ready to play if he's healthy. So that'll be interesting to monitor. Okay, the Blazers, as we head into Thursday night's game against the Thunder, the Blazers are in 11th place in the Western Conference, 3 games behind the Denver Nuggets for the 8th and final playoff seed. They're kind of in this interesting position, which I guess we could talk about in a little bit, between being almost equidistant between a very high lottery pick and a playoff spot. It's kind of a weird scenario. And then final news and note, looking at the schedule ahead, the Blazers will host the Oklahoma City Thunder tonight on TNT, then the Brooklyn Nets on Saturday. Then they leave again for a quick 2-game trip to Minnesota and Oklahoma City. So what should we talk about first, Casey? Easy?
I don't know.
Easy?
Yeah, old Ed Davis probably being out for the press release said that he would likely be out. What did it say? It didn't say definitely. It said like possibly.
Here's my interpretation of what the release said. He was going to miss the season, but they would give a timeline of how much time he would miss after he had surgery. And my guess, after been going through this for as many years as we have, is they need to see how bad his labrum is, if it's a full tear or if it's a partial tear.
Gotcha.
And then, my guess is what they're going to release is how long his rehab will be, how long he'll have to be out. But they have essentially said he's out for the season, is how I read it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how I proposed it as well. And then when I looked back at it, I was like, well, I guess I didn't say for sure, but I mean, I think one, Ed hasn't been playing a whole lot as it is anyways, and two, just the place that the team is in right now, unless he was like full on 100%, this injury is not that bad, I would expect that he would be out for the rest of the year.
Here's the specific wording that I just stole specific because I just read this, but here's the exact wording of the release yesterday. Quote, a specific prognosis will be determined for Davis following the procedure, but he is expected to be out for the remainder of the 2016-17
season. Well, expected
season.
To be out, so that's pretty definitive. Yeah. So and been a rough season for Ed, and it's mentioned in that release that he had the injury and that the injury occurred in the 2015-16 season. So I guess in some respects you maybe look at that and say, well, maybe that's why Ed has not been as good this year as he was last year. Just not the same finishing at the rim. Like there's just
something's been off.
Yeah, exactly. Something was off, and I think we probably talked about it a couple times. And I guess in theory you could at least partially attribute that to his shoulder. I remember seeing too. I can't remember where it was at. That he got hit in the shoulder in a road game. God, it's been the last couple weeks, and I think it was Washington. Is what it was. It was Washington, and I remember thinking like that didn't seem like that hard of a hit, and like you could tell like it really bothered him.
Yeah.
So.
It sort of confirms one of my theories, but doesn't, if that makes sense. Our good friend and my colleague Mike Richmond and I have talked about this before. If you'll remember back the first day of training camp, Ed Davis didn't practice that first day, and I thought, just me being how I am with our job, I was like, something's wrong with him, and I think it's his back. And so I thought he was kind of playing with, on the down low, a sort of a back injury all year. Maybe that was his shoulder then, and maybe it's kind of been bothering him all year. So who knows? But yeah, you're right. Something's not been quite right. He was such an important part of what the team did last year, and sort of really in a lot of ways was a perfect representation of the season they had, and kind of actually this year is too. Like you said, something's just been missing.
Yeah.
Something's been missing with this team. Something's been missing with Ed Davis all season, and apparently we now have discovered what that something is. But I guess for the here and now, the more, looking forward, it's who will fill in the gap. And as you mentioned, his playing time's been sporadic. He's played in 46 games
played 46
this year.
46 games, 17.2 minutes per game,
Yeah.
and I'm guessing that most of that has come earlier in the season. I would say the last 2 months and a half to 2 months, Ed has really been kind of a non-factor in the rotation.
He's missed games with an ankle and a wrist injuries, I think 6 or 7 games with those, and then just sat out otherwise. You wonder how many of those times he sat out, though, was because of his shoulder.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's kind of a little bit of a mystery at this point, whether it was coach's decision or shoulder or a combination of the two because of the shoulder, or who knows. But, at this point, the Blazers' options are pretty limited. You're looking at, obviously, Yusuf Nurkic is starting now and is their primary big. You've got Myers Leonard, and you would assume Noah Vonleh might start to receive a little more playing time.
You would imagine. Again, I just don't know how much this. If
impact.
You've been watching the Blazers for the last 2-3 weeks, I don't know you're going to really see a noticeable difference in kind of those rotations. Just looking at his game log here, obviously didn't play against Detroit, didn't play against Toronto. 13 minutes, 19 minutes, 27 minutes in the games before that. Didn't play against Boston, played 18 minutes against Dallas, didn't play against Oklahoma City, played 60 minutes against Dallas, and prior to that he had 6 DNPs out of 7 games, and I think that was when he had the ankle injury or so on and so forth. So basically, while not good news by any stretch, I just don't know that the practical effect of the injury and him and Davis being out for the season is, at this point, I don't really know that it's all that egregious.
Yeah.
I'm curious too what Ed's how Ed's going to deal with the rehabilitation of it. Like, Ed strikes me as the kind of guy who, like, he's not necessarily going to be like, yeah, I'm going to be around all the time. Like, Ed seems like the kind of guy to me, like, he's going to get the surgery and then he's going to kind of do his rehab, and that'll probably be all you'll see of Ed. He's a guy who likes to. I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is I just don't know. Ed's going to be like behind the bench, like clapping and going crazy after games.
Yeah. Well, he's definitely not going to be clapping if his shoulder got operated on.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But that will be interesting to see if he has. One thing that was a bit confusing about the release to me was it said next Tuesday, which I assume means not in 4 or 5 days, but in 10 to 12 days, if that makes any sense. Because it would be this Tuesday if it were in a few days, but that was a little ambiguous. So
I think they do that when it's an injury like this, and when it's when you're in the situation the Trailblazers are in right now, I think sometimes if a guy's going to go under the knife, they'll give him a couple days to be like, hey, get out all the things you need to do with that arm before you have surgery. Because again, if it's not like we're not going to rush you back, and it's an injury you've already been dealing with for a while now. The whole idea of like, let's cut this guy as quickly as we can so we can get the timeline started as soon as we can. I'm guessing there's not that same kind of
Yeah.
They're not as concerned about that.
I guess what I was getting at, though, is let's say he has his surgery in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then we're looking at there's a month left in the season anyway.
Right, okay.
So,
as
far as him being around.
Well, and I
stuff.
think we're kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Is that if they thought that it maybe wasn't that bad and if they were really concerned about Ed getting back this season, maybe they have that. Maybe they don't wait for 2 weeks to do that surgery.
Right.
So I'm guessing old Dr. Elatrage is probably got to get on a waiting list for that guy.
He evidently is. Yeah.
Of those surgeries. So
going back to Batum.
Yeah.
I believe he was.
And I think he did, and he did Myers as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he's obviously one of the guys you go to if you need to get something worked on in your shoulder. So
I'll keep his name in mind should I ever have.
Well,
to
and that's
have
what I'm saying, Joe. Is I don't know if a person such as yourself or myself could even contract the services of Dr. Elatrage.
Maybe if we had Nick or Ed give us a recommendation, call the office for us. Be like, hey, my boy Casey's got a shoulder injury. Can you squeeze him in sometime in the next 2 months?
Yeah, I know a really good guy. He's a friend. I'll see if I can get you on the
exactly.
List. I don't know if those guys would do that though, Joe.
I bet if you asked them, they would. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know that I would ask.
Yeah, that'd be kind of a weird ask. Yeah, I think that's more where my mind went to. Is like I don't really know that I would feel comfortable being like, hey, so I got the shoulder issue. I know you know a guy. Maybe can you put me in touch?
So let's do a quick trade deadline recap. It's we haven't had a podcast since then, so we might as well delve into it. Although there's not much to add since then, because since we did last speak, since Nurkic was acquired for Mason Plumlee and that draft pick, Blazers didn't do anything else. So and really, it was interesting hearing radio questions and hearing fans react to the deadline day. It kind of reminded me of college football signing day, how when guys get commitments months ahead of time and then they don't do anything on signing day, fans are like, what happened? Why didn't they sign anybody? In this case, the Blazers had already made their deal by the time the trade deadline happened. Their deal came a week early. So the kind of thud that you heard on the day of the deadline, I heard a lot of moaning and groaning about why didn't the Blazers do anything, is they had already done something.
Sure.
So,
and I think that's just kind of general. That's the way fans always
kind of a
are,
letdown.
It's like everyone wants to see trades, and it's understandable. And then when they don't happen, it's always like, well, why didn't these trades happen?
Yeah.
And I think that's I understand that's part of being a fan is to kind of get excited about those things. But yeah, I mean, I kind of felt the same way. It was like, but they because every time someone was like, well, why aren't the Blazers doing anything? I was like, but they did get a first round pick and a young player 4 days ago. So they did do something. It just wasn't at the deadline. And I think that's obviously too. People see the Cousins trade and then assume that there's bigger trades out there to be had. They hear that is Jimmy Butler available? Is Paul George available? And it's debatable how much guys like that are actually available. But when people hear it, they're like, well, hey, we should get involved in that. So I think that's kind of part of that reaction too. But it also dissipated pretty quick too after the trade deadline. It was like, okay, well, that's it.
I feel like we sort of tried to be a cautionary, and we always do every season. I mean, we get trade deadline questions months before the actual deadline, especially this year during a season like this season. But how many times over the years have guys been out there in rumors, as you just alluded to, or are quote-unquote available, and then they never get traded?
Yeah.
And so you wonder how much of that is actually true, and how much is of that fire is stoked by rival GMs trying to drum up, nonsense rumors about an opponent or whatever. And so we always caution fans not to get enamored with a player who supposedly is available, because you don't actually know if that player is available.
And it's just from a logical perspective, nothing happening is generally the most likely thing to happen. So, it's, again, when you have a big trade happen, as, the Cousins, to New Orleans trade was, again, I think it understandably people react to that and think, maybe there's bigger deals on the horizon. But, I think especially with the Blazers having those picks and, the 3 picks that they have become more valuable when there's actually a pick number attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that unless you're a team that feels like you can make a move to to kind of get into the upper echelons. Those are the kind of moves you make at the trade deadline. The general stockpiling talent and trying to improve your team for seasons going forward, which I feel like that's where the Blazers are at this trade deadline. Those are deals that I think tend to happen more in the offseason. Those aren't trade deadline deals to me are like, we need to make a deal because we need to accomplish X. And the Blazers don't have that right now.
By the way, New Orleans, since acquiring DeMarcus Cousins, 1-3. Their one win was a game that he didn't play because he was suspended.
I mean, and that's adding a guy like Cousins to your team is probably more difficult than adding kind of for multiple reasons too. I mean, one, I think the personality. Two, his style of play is really quite different than what they were doing in New Orleans. Three, when your two best players are bigs, like that's kind of that takes some work to figure out how that best operates. So not surprising, at least for me, to see them struggling early. I think they probably will get it figured out, but I don't know if they'll get it figured out quickly enough to make the playoffs this year.
So obviously the Blazers' newest acquisition, Yusuf Nurkic, has played about 4 games with the team now?
I believe so.
Yeah, he's been a little better than advertised, I would say.
I don't know exactly what I was expecting, but I've been pleasantly surprised, I would say, for sure. Better passer than I thought. I knew that he was fairly adept offensively. I feel like defensively, too, he's a little more lively than I think we might have been led to believe. And again, it's just, as we talked about before, just a completely different look for the Blazers than they've had in the last couple seasons, which in and of itself, I think has had some positive benefits.
Yeah, finally a guy in the pick and roll who can roll, or who is a willing roller.
Who is willing to roll.
Yeah, and you've noticed that watching it. And defensively, too, he can show a little bit, and he can step out up top on some of those pick and rolls. He's got quicker feet than you expect for a guy that huge. Obviously, his free throw shooting leaves a lot to be desired, but
he's shooting 71% as a Trailblazer in his last 4 games.
True. Well, I guess, yeah.
I mean, that's
true. Yeah.
That's a legitimate gripe, Joe. I'll give you that one.
Well, and you had that in Mason Plumlee anyway. It's not like he was.
I guess. Yeah, exactly.
So. But in hindsight, when you look at that trade, it was a pretty good trade. They got a first round pick. They got an asset that they could. I would think they would consider trading away at the deadline. In the draft to use as an asset that way. And they got a 22-year-old, 7-foot, 280-pound guy who's pretty solid. A guy you can mold and a guy who still has a lot to offer. And they gave up a guy who didn't fit in their long-term plans because they couldn't afford him even if they wanted to. So, I guess it was a pretty good trade.
Yeah, I think generally it's and I think people consider it a very good trade. I haven't heard anyone being like, "Oh man, they shouldn't have done that deal." Especially again when you can get a first round pick for a guy who you were not going to be able to retain. I mean, like that's great. Like that's the kind of value that I would not have expected the Blazers to be able to get for a guy like Mason Plumlee, who I think is very skilled, and I love Mason. I think he's a very good player. I think he's going to have success in Detroit, or not Detroit, Denver. I don't think he would have as much success in Detroit, but in Denver, I think he's going to do just fine. And I hope he gets that deal. But and again, like I don't know that whatever deal he signs, I think Blazer fans will probably look at it and say, yeah, I think that was probably the right decision to kind of make that move.
Okay, we probably did a little too much on the deadline recap there. But you've got your full.
And by the way, Nurkic in his 4 games with the Blazers averaging 10.4 points on 55% shooting, 6.2 rebounds, 2.6 assists, and 1.4 steals in 22.2 minutes.
One thing I will say is he's part of a never-ending quest for this franchise to find a center. It is just a never-ending revolving door of bigs to roll through here, both with immense promise, both players who surprise and cement themselves like your Robin Lopez, guys who obviously suffer injuries and flame out. It is incredible how this franchise just cannot land a center that will just be here and be the guy.
Yeah, it's been you're right, Joe. It's been a long time to go, and maybe Nurkic is the guy. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
Though I don't know if that makes Portland all that much different from a lot of teams. I mean, heck, you look at the Sixers and the issues they're having right now with injuries, and like I had mentioned on Twitter, that very familiar situation there starting to build. I feel like that's what they're going through right now. I feel like exactly what the Blazers went through a couple of years with Greg Oden and those guys, and it's unfortunate. Hopefully they get that straightened out. I like to see players play.
The two biggest topics on the tips of every fan's tongue, at least the ones that come at me on Twitter and that I hear out in the world. Tank. Are the Blazers tanking?
Mm-hmm.
And who are they going to draft?
Mm-hmm.
Who should they draft?
Yes.
The fan base has already turned their attention to the offseason with 6 weeks left, which I guess is justifiable in a season that is
I know you can't
completely disappointing.
I wouldn't blame fans for that one bit.
It's tough to watch your team lose. And by the way, do you happen to know what the Blazers' February record was off the top of your head?
I believe it was 2-7.
That's correct.
Yep.
Ding, 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 ding.
Which I think when we did our picks for February record, if we did that, I'm guessing I probably took the over on that one. So got that one wrong. Again, add that to the list of. I don't know if that counts as a prediction because we're trying to hold ourselves accountable. But long story short, that was incorrect.
Yeah.
I thought they would win more than 2 games.
And we do have questions about tanking and questions about the draft. I don't know if we just want to get into them now. If we want to answer,
we might as well. And my
stock
general
answer?
Elevator pitch for the what they're doing is no. I don't think they're tanking, and I don't think they're going to tank. One, they're losing games as it is, so I don't think you're going to see them necessarily go out there and try less hard when they're already trying hard and still losing games. And two, I just don't think that. I think until it's obvious that they're out of it, they're going to play like they've got a chance at it. And again, if they get to final couple weeks of the season and they're 5 games out of a playoff spot, at that point maybe they try to implore some guys to maybe take a little rest. But I think that's as close to purposefully not trying to win as this team is going to get.
I guess I agree with you. I don't think the makeup of Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum and the rest of what is a very young roster still, when you look at their age, they don't want to lose. And you might, if you got members of the front office on the down low in a back alley at some point, they might have a different goal or hope, I should say, not necessarily goal. So I agree with you. I don't know. I know that the players don't want to tank, but the other subject is not whether or not they want to, but whether or not they should. Yeah. And I think there's a strong argument for the fact that they should, because at this point it's more or less a lost season. And even with Kevin Durant's injury, you would assume that the Warriors will still be the number 1 seed, and you would still assume that they would be a tough first-round matchup. And so you're looking at a first-round exodus. And at this point, as we sort of alluded to, let's look at the standings, actually.
I already got them up here, Joe.
Okay, so tell us, obviously the Blazers are 2.5 games behind Denver for the last playoff spot, right? But they're obviously in this web of teams.
They're actually 3 games behind.
3 games,
Denver.
Okay, thank you. So more importantly, they're in this web of teams that are all bunched together, both in the East and West, record-wise. So they're kind of in this position of, how far are they from like a top 5 pick? They're like 3 games back of that.
They're not far away from it. Yeah, so just to run it down here, the Kings are technically 9th at 25-36, as are the Timberwolves at 25-36. The Blazers 10th at 24-35. Dallas Mavericks 12th at 24-36. So only a half game ahead of the Mavericks. And then you have the Pelicans at 24-37, which, boy, God, it's so bunched up there. So that's a game. Up the Blazers are a game up on the Pelicans, basically. And then from there you have the Lakers, who are at 19-42, 31.5 games back. So that's they're 6 games ahead of the Lakers, so I don't know if they're going to get to that point.
But even when you look at the East,
and then you got the East, exactly.
There's 4 teams either at where they are or worse than them in the East. Or really almost 3. The Knicks are 25-36 are technically better, but there's 3 or 4 teams there that are bunched with them or worse, and 4 teams in the West that are worse. So should they go on a losing streak, you're looking at a top 5 pick potentially, and more ping pong balls means potentially a top 3 pick.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at the franchise and what's best for it moving forward, it goes back to the season-long debate we had last year, at least for the first 4 months of the season, is, how high do you take this team or how low do you take it? And I think right now it just if I'm in the front office, I'm not purposely tanking like the 76ers, but I don't mind them losing because you're staring at what is potentially a difference-making player that you can acquire in the draft that you control contractual-wise, which this organization obviously values heavily, and that can sooner than later become an important piece of your team. So, man, to me, it's a no-brainer. As a fan, you want to see the team fare well, but you don't want to see them win moving forward, I think.
Objectively, it would be better for them to get a high draft pick than it would for them to make the playoffs this year. I mean, there's I don't know necessarily how you argue that unless you think that Kevin Durant getting injured somehow improved the chances of the 8th seed to beat the 1 seed who are going to be the Warriors. Financially, there are financial benefits to making the playoffs. But again, if you're talking about the health of the basketball side of the franchise going forward, again, it's a little hard at this point with seeing how the team has played to argue that making the playoffs would be objectively better than getting a high draft pick. If the Blazers were kind of the upstart team in the second half that is making a run, then again, maybe at that point you can make an argument that making the playoffs would be better. Maybe that
like last year.
Lucky, exactly.
Like last year.
They just don't seem to be trending that way. So that kind of takes that argument out of it as well. For me, it's kind of like a relationship. So two people are married to have kids,
Terrible idea.
They at some point in time, maybe they decide, look, we are not people who are meant for each other. We should not be together anymore. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get divorced, because they have these kids they have to concern themselves with, and they're making decisions based off of that as well. So I feel like the Blazers right now are kind of the, staying together for the kids phase right now in terms of how they finish out the season, because you want to do right by your wards, but on the other hand too, that this thing you have going is maybe not for the long haul.
Yeah, and I know fans don't want to root for a loser, and they don't want to root for losses, and it's hard as a fan. Yeah, some do.
And again, I think it's perfectly fair for fans to kind of base their opinion on what they want to happen for the rest of the season off of that. I personally, I always like to see good basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I root for. I root for good games, and I know there's some people that root for good games wherein the Blazers end up playing well and then still losing. So, for example, I'm sure that people watching the Detroit game were probably, that game had a little something for everyone, and that Blazers played well in spurts, and game went to overtime, and they lost in overtime. So I think for some people that's like a
win-win.
Exactly. I would
win-win-lose.
I still prefer to see them win.
Yeah.
But again, I'm rooting for good games. So my long story short, I think people should root for whoever they feel best rooting for. If you want the team to get a high draft pick, great. If you want the team to still make the playoffs, awesome. If you want to just see the guys play hard and whatever happens from there, that's good too.
You know me, last year was on the bandwagon of they might as well just lose to get a high draft pick. That was better for the long-term future of the franchise. That's how I was for the first 3 months of the year. And then obviously I proved to be wrong because they ended up going to the second round of the playoffs. But maybe in a way I proved to be right, because then when you look what they are now, sort of what they did inflated what we thought they were last year. And
I will say, though, that and it's one of those things you just never know how it's going to turn out. So making the playoffs last year, they had to give the pick to Denver.
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather have given Denver the 2016 pick than giving them the 2017 pick. So
True.
In that regard, last year, even if you were someone who wanted to see the team, won't say tank, but if you wanted to see them get a draft pick, I would rather, I think conveying that draft pick last year, I think the Blazers got lucky. You look at the class so far this year, they haven't done jack, and that's not to say that they won't going forward, but who did Denver select with that pick last year? I shouldn't even ask that, actually, because there's no way I'm going to be able to look
I just wonder how much of their bottom line right now, the amount of money that they handed out in the summer, all the contracts that were awarded, how much of that was based off the success they had last year, and had they not had that success, how different that would look now.
I don't know. I don't know.
It's an interesting,
because I'm I think you can make the argument both ways, and I really don't know. But I think it had just as much to do with, hey, we don't, at least, I mean, with Alan Crabb, Myers Leonard, Mo Harkless, I think they make those signings regardless of what happened last year. I think they could have ended up in last place, and they still would have made those signings. Evan Turner, I think you can make more of an argument that perhaps Turner's signing was more
plug in a hole that they saw.
Exactly, or like maybe they make that Turner signing thinking they're going to be better this year than they were. But the others, the re-signings, I think those are straight up. We don't want to lose these guys for nothing, and we're going to sign them, and we'll take our chances that they either play well or have some kind of value down the road. That's
your take?
That's my gut feeling on that. But I think it's fair to argue otherwise. Malik Beasley, by the way, shooting guard,
Florida State's own.
Is he?
He was a one and done guy. Yeah.
Was he?
Yeah.
Has he played this year?
Not very much. I was surprised he went in the first round. Actually, I was surprised that he left after his freshman year.
Yeah, he had a surgery to repair a stress fracture in his right leg.
Oh,
stress
I didn't know that.
He did not participate in pre-draft workouts.
He's a pretty good shooter. That was sort of his deal.
He's been signed to the Skyforce, recalled by the Nuggets, re-signed to the Skyforce again. So yeah, he's in the D League.
There you go. Should we get to questions?
Yes, let's get to questions, Joe. I feel like we're kind of bumbling along today. I feel like.
Yeah,
I apologize. This isn't our best podcast.
Yeah, we can't.
It's a little hard right now. I mean, because just even with writing, it's.
What do you write about?
Yeah, it's a bit tough.
Yeah,
so, I mean, tough. I'm doing air quotes right now because it's really not that hard.
Well, we've talked about this before too. It's like you can only crush a team so much from my perspective. They are what they are. And then no one wants to read stuff that's positive about a team that's not very good. So you're in this kind of no man's land of what do you write about? How do you cover a team that's underwhelmed and disappointed? And it's just how do you balance that?
Yeah. I'm working on a real hot story about the Letterman jackets that C.J. McCollum bought for the entire team.
There you go.
It's going to blow your socks off.
It's going to be hot. I'll be interested to see if
they're nice Letterman jackets.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Did you get one?
No. They have, little names on the back for some guys put the city they're from, some guys nicknames. This is where I'm at right now, Joe. These are the stories I'm quote unquote excited to tell.
Okay, well, Justin Hooper wants, speaking of fashion, I don't know if that really works in this instance, but he wants to know, are the Blazers going to get any new uniforms for the 2017-18 season coming up soon?
Well, since Nike is coming on, I would guess that there's going to be some changes, maybe even for all 30 teams.
The Blazers are doing a uniform redesign.
Yeah, there's been stuff in the works for a bit.
They Chris talked about it in
That's right.
McGowan talked about it in a media day.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing a redesign. They called it a modernization.
Yeah.
And
sometimes I can't remember what I hear in meetings.
What's not real
and what I've heard in public. So
I hear ya.
I always try to be a little careful there. But yeah, you should talk about that, Joe.
Well, my understanding is the Blazers are doing a uniform redesign, and it's not supposed to be like earth-shattering or significant according to what has been revealed publicly, but they are at least tweaking the uniform design at some level. I think the way it was presented at Media Day is that they'll keep the the standard logo and all that stuff, but that leads me to believe there'll be some tweaking of the font and the numbers.
Yeah, I think, and it's kind of some of the changes that people have been asking for a while now in regards to some of the logo treatments. I think you will see differently, and also too, this is my standard kind of logo uniform discussion talk pitch, is that the primary logo of the Blazers is the pinwheel in that black trapezoid that says Trail Blazers on it. The reason you're looking confused right now, Joe, is because we don't ever use that logo because it sucks, but it is technically our primary logo. So I'm guessing that is going to change, and maybe a few other changes here and there.
There you go. But to answer your question, yes, I believe they will debut next season, is my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay, next up from Nico Matagora. A while ago, you hinted that Festus might not be with the team much longer. Can you elaborate? Well, he survived through the trade deadline, so he will be here through the end of the season.
Yeah.
And then the Blazers have a team option for next year, which my understanding is that they will probably not pick up, so they'll owe him $1 million, and he'll be a free agent.
Yeah, I know there was, the whole hugging guys in the locker room thing. I think they didn't do the medical exception, and they didn't trade him. So he's with the team, or at least he's on the team. I don't know. He didn't travel on the last trip. I don't know that he's going to be going on any trips going forward. Well, I guess we'll have to see on that. I think they probably tried to move his contract. It was reported that they were basically trying to get like a second-round pick for it or something like that for a team that's under the cap. Didn't happen. So, yeah, I would expect that that's probably it.
Okay, next up from JD. If we were contending, would Davis have had off-season surgery, i.e., is this a tank, quote-unquote, surgery? I don't know. I haven't spoken with Ed about his injury and his surgery yet. Hopefully he will be able to speak tonight before the Thunder game so we can get more details there. But I don't know how much of last season he played with it. I don't know when he hurt it. The release just said that he originally suffered it during last season. So my guess is it reached a point where he couldn't play, and so he decided to have surgery.
Yeah. And, to answer the question, if they're really rolling right now and Ed was part of the rotation and it was just kind of maybe starting to bother him a little bit more, perhaps he puts it off until the offseason, but we're not there. So, yeah. And the fact that if the injury has occurred last year, I think there's, to a certain extent, there is some ability to play through it given circumstances that weren't playing through an injury. Just doesn't seem like that's really the situation that Ed is in right now.
Now we have Jacob Parks wants to know if Davis was a DNP CD or was he hurt? Like the last couple games he didn't play.
I mean, who knows?
He hasn't. Yeah. I will say this: I haven't seen a shoulder injury listed on an injury report for him this season.
No, it has not.
So,
but I'll say too, going to practices, I have not been getting the sense that Ed has been doing much at all, if anything, in practices lately. So.
We also have a couple draft questions. Yeah. From Chad, Isaiah Coe. Who in the draft with their first-round pick do you think compliments Mick Lillard the best?
By the way, I'm not co-signing the Mick Lillard thing, by the way. That's I got no problem if other people want to use that. I am not going to use it.
Okay. And then we have, let's see, Warren Forrest wants to know which prospects would you be most excited to see in a Blazer uniform? I haven't turned my attention to the draft yet.
I have not watched 1 second of college basketball.
I have watched almost 2, maybe 3 Florida State basketball games, and that is it.
Actually, I watched that Dylan Brooks game winner versus Cal on Twitter.
Okay, well,
so
maybe
I've seen 8 seconds of college basketball this year.
Okay, maybe you can answer Michael Morris's question then, which is which current Oregon Duck would fit best on the Blazers?
I couldn't answer that question. I know some names of guys who are on the team, but that's about it. To answer the question, I mean, one, with their first pick, you assume it's going to be somewhere. If it's somewhere around 10, anywhere in the top 15, I would say, you go with best player available. So I believe the consensus in this draft is that the best players are all point guards / combo guards. While those might not be great fits, I think if the Blazers end up with a pick that high, they're going to take one of those guys and just see how it happens. Outside of that, I think you probably are looking for a defensive-minded 4/5. So whoever that would be. I don't know who that is because, again, I don't have a whole lot of knowledge of college basketball. And by a whole lot, I mean I have next to none. But I do think that they need to bring in, or best case scenario, they are able to bring in some young, decent-sized players whose primary emphasis is defense and perhaps three-point shooting.
Dilbo Baggins wants to know, do you imagine we draft and keep our lottery pick, trade the Memphis pick, and stash Cleveland's? Which kind of raises an issue of, first of all, it is way too early, guys, to be getting into specifics about the draft because we don't know the exact draft slots that they'll have, and we haven't even turned our attention to prepping for the draft.
Yeah, I read mock drafts, but that's it. Yeah.
But to answer your question generally, I think if you're the Blazers and you have a top 5, top 8 pick, you have to draft and select that guy.
They're keeping.
They're keeping that.
I will say what I do think they're going to keep that first pick because
exactly.
you need the talent and you need the
salary.
Yeah.
Right. Totally. We agree on that. Now with the other 2 picks, if you can use those maybe to pair them with a current player you have, that maybe duplicates, you have duplicate players, or you need a different type of player, you can package that away to get a different player. I think as bad as the Blazers have been, they're in this interesting position where they actually have the ability to improve the roster quite a bit this summer because they not only can add a very good player with a top potentially 8 pick, but they have these picks and they have young talent that's still relatively attractive around the league to use and pair to get a deal or 2 that will accentuate their roster now. So as bad as the year's been, it's interesting where they're at now in that it can be a relatively kind of quick transformation with the talent they have and the assets they have to deal. So I think in a way we both just sort of answered Dilbo Baggins' question.
Yeah, and the way I see just by the way, the way I see it playing out too is particularly when you have it's the Denver pick, right? It's the Memphis pick from Denver. So that Memphis pick particularly, which you assume will probably be, say, 22, somewhere in the low 20s. Those picks are good to deal because you're going to probably see a team or 2 that has a guy on their board who has fallen, who they really like, and at that point, then that's when you can perhaps make some deals to move some talent you already have or some players that are on your roster to a team that is excited about a draftable player who they don't have the pick for anymore, but want to acquire that player. And and that's why those picks are more valuable actually at the draft, because it always comes down to a team saying, hey, a guy that we didn't think is going to be available is available at that spot. Is it worth for us to take back some salary in order to get that player? That's when those picks I feel like are at their highest value, and that's how I foresee that playing out. Just pure gut.
Pure gut.
And I'm always torn about that late first round pick though, because it's become more and more kind of vogue to have players in the second round who don't have the guaranteed contracts when you're already selecting that late. But again, if there's a guy who a team really likes that has slipped all the way down to the end of the first round, I don't know necessarily you're going to wait and chance it to pick that player up with the second round pick, which increases that value. So I agree, Joe. I like that they have some options to improve this team with the assets they've collected.
Okay, next up from Brad Anderson, is there an assistant coach who has moved on that's been missed more than any other? Interesting that you asked this question because I've talked about this with a couple different people, Casey included, over the course of the year, sort of hypothesizing or wondering how much the team has missed Jay Triano, who was a very important assistant coach on the team over the previous 4 years, basically was Terry Stott's right-hand man, a guy who with years and years of head coaching experience from the Toronto Raptors and in Canada, his native Canada, through the Canadian national team. And maybe they have missed him. I mean, I don't think there's any question that they missed him because they were close, but perhaps they've missed him from a win-loss standpoint too. I don't know. It's hard to gauge these type of things because of the inner workings of staffs and how much work goes where is sort of hard to quantify. But I know that Jay was an important voice in Terry Stott's coaching staff and in his locker room. So
yeah, I mean, and the reason that Jay got another job is because Jay is good at the job he does. So I mean, I think it would almost be a little bit kind of, what's the right way to put this? I don't think you'd be paying a guy like Jay his proper respect if you didn't assume that there was at least some negative that came with him not being on the staff.
Right.
And I would extend that to the guys who were on the team last year who aren't this year. So, your Gerald Hendersons, your Chris Kamens, who was at the game in Detroit, who snuck out before he requested tickets, came pregame, and then he must have just left because I kept going. I went to a seat like 4 different times during the game, and he wasn't there.
That's such a Kamen move.
It's a complete. I couldn't believe he showed up in the first place.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's been kind of my stock answer is that at this point you have to assume that everything that's different on this roster, be it coaches, even bit players, or players and coaches, you have to assume that's had some effect. So even your Tim Frazier's, your Brian Roberts your Gerald Henderson, your Chris Kaman, your Jay Triano, anyone else who was with the team last year who's not this year, I think you have to assume that maybe collectively that has had some kind of effect.
Okay, Sturtzman wants to know, what is your favorite fruit?
My favorite fruit, Asian pears. A good Asian pear is
right off the top.
delicious.
Huh?
Well, I was trying to be quick.
I think I really like a nice, perfectly ripe, in-season summer peach.
So I don't like peaches very much.
Man, love it.
I like the flavor of peaches, but the whole skin fuzz thing, that's a complete.
Yeah.
Same with kiwis. Like I don't eat kiwis because of that reason.
I'm a big fruit fan though. Like I love pears. I like apples. I love oranges. I'll eat a banana. I mean, I will just devour fruit at any stage of the game. Pineapple, a nice in-season pineapple.
I eat a lot of fruit too. And to turn this conversation at least somewhat Blazer related, there's fruit plates on the flight. But it's always melon. I don't know why melons are always like the fruit that they go.
It's easiest to package, to cut up and package.
But it's like it's so seasonal. Like you get me a bunch of cut up honeydew at this time of year, and like it's just like eating whatever.
Gross.
Like it's just the texture of a honeydew melon. It doesn't taste like anything.
Square. Yeah.
Same with I think wintertime is pineapple season. It's weird that
depends on where you're getting the fruit from.
Well, I know, but like so it's just weird to me that tangerines are like a winter harvest.
Yeah,
and because they're so warm things. I don't know. This is my fruit discussion.
Okay.
More fruit though. Casey likes the fruit.
Yeah, for sure. Darby Marriott wants to know, who do you think has a more promising career at this point, Myers Leonard or Noah Vonleh?
Ooh,
boy, that's an interesting question.
That is a good question, actually. Boy,
I will say this.
It's interesting for the wrong reason.
Yeah, right. Well, I was going to say that I feel like Myers has. Is it accurate to say he's been given more of a chance? Because maybe not, because Noah's been starting for the bulk of the last 2 years. Well, not the bulk, but a large chunk of the last 2 years.
I think they've equally been given their opportunities. I don't know that one has really kind of received more unwarranted help than the other.
I'm trying to think of I'm going to look up as fast as I can while you're pondering your answer, what their career like.
I'm going to say Vonleh just because I don't think he has kind of the questions about his utility that Myers has attached to his name. Just because the things that Noah does, I feel like are
like the hustle things.
Exactly. Yeah. Kind of just, the fighting at the rim and kind of just getting in where you fit in, I think probably it's easier to integrate, and he's also younger than Myers too, so that obviously helps a player. But
yeah, so Myers is in his 5th season. He's played 276 games, 33 starts, played about 17 minutes a game. Noah Vonleh, about 14 minutes a game, 154 career games. He's in his 3rd year and 74 starts. I guess I would answer Noah because he's still greener, he's younger, has less experience. So you sort of feel like what you've seen out of Myers, you kind of know what he has, whereas Noah, you feel like maybe he still has a little more to offer. So I'd say I'd say Noah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But again, I don't think you feel real great about that, and I think it kind of. It's reflective of where both those guys are at in their careers right now, and you would definitely hope to see more from both of those guys, and just really haven't yet.
Next up from Lauren Gibb, do you know of a good place to buy Blazers baby clothes online?
Trailblazers fan shop. Let's go to the Trailblazers fan shop here. See what's what. Do you own any? You probably don't, Joe, because of.
I own a couple. Finley has a Florida State T-shirt and a Florida State dress, and she had a couple Florida State onesies. But
do you let her wear the racist Florida State logo?
Well, first of all, that is not racist. It's been approved and okayed by the Seminole Tribe of Florida. Before it was ever created, it was created.
So
that's all.
That's all it takes. Just a little. All you have to do is get a sign off, and it's okay.
I mean, that's like I'm not even going to do this.
I'm just pushing Joe's buttons right now. I really don't even feel one way or another.
One
about
more
it.
note
I
on
just
this
know that it bothers them.
For years, the Oregonian led the charge to not use Native American nicknames and such in the newspaper, such as your Redskins, because it was deemed racist.
I mean, that's, come on.
Right. However, Florida State was not on that list. You were allowed to use Seminoles for, in part, the reasons that I previously just said.
So do they sign off on a white guy painting his face and then throwing that spear into the ground at halftime?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Has a Seminole fan? Or,
I don't know.
To answer the question, if you go to the Trailblazers fan shop, there are a number of Blazers baby gear. You can get a girls' newborn Portland Trailblazers creeper set, three-point play creeper set for $29.99. The newborn Adidas red Portland Trailblazers primary logo bodysuit is $17.99. $59.99. Boy, that seems like a lot. For the Adidas Portland Trailblazers infant custom replica road jersey.
Anybody that's buying a jersey for $60 for their young child that grows faster than you can ever possibly imagine is a real fan.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you got it, spend it. $21.99 for the infant Portland Trailblazers red raglan coverall sleeper. That's actually probably the direction I would go, the footsie ones. And there's only a few left, according to the website. It looks like...
Did you read the website?
What's that?
Did you read the website?
That's what I'm reading right now.
No, I mean, like, give them the website URL.
Oh, yeah, trailblazersfanshop.com /search/baby. Or at least that's what I searched for was baby. So you can also get personalized vomit blankets.
There you go.
Spit up blankets or whatever those are called.
Another thing, Lauren, as a father of a young child, the Google machine works well. That's how I find all my Florida State gear, and then you find a place that you can access that.
$54.99 for a personalized infant robe. Babies wear robes?
No.
Those are some luxurious-ass babies.
Finley does have a robe. It was given to us as a gift, but she never wears it. I mean, it's... Actually, she did wear it last night.
She doesn't shuffle around the house in a robe.
Smoking cigars.
Newspaper under her arm, reading coffee and talking to the mailman.
No, not usually. No. I wish. That would be amazing. I would get some great video of that.
That's true. What does she do all day? She goes to daycare, right?
She goes to daycare. Usually just generally causes us as much grief as possible.
Good.
Very, very needy.
She's been taking my advice.
Yes. Very well. She's been taking your advice. She's good, though. She's fun.
Yeah, it's a good baby.
She's a good baby. She's almost not a baby. She's going to be 2 in May.
I was going to say, yeah, she's been around for a minute.
She's toddler.
Yeah.
Terrible twos is real, too. Let me tell you.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How are her teeth? She got good teeth?
Teeth are all in, mostly, yeah.
Yeah,
she came in early to normal on that.
Do you give her fluoride to keep her teeth strong?
Oh, yeah.
Since we refuse to do that here?
Yep. She gets fluoride drops every night.
Good for you, Joe.
Yeah.
That's a good parent.
Yeah, we're on top of it.
Yeah. Teeth care. It's important.
All right, we'll end it on that. How about that? We don't have any more questions. You got anything else you want to talk about?
I don't know. I'm just going to say I think this is like a bottom 5 podcast for us.
You think so?
Yeah. No, I'm feeling a little
I think it mirrors the team and where they're
Perhaps,
at right now.
Joe. I think that you might be onto something there.
Maybe
We're trying hard, but it's just didn't really come together today.
Maybe we should mix it up next week and have someone on as a guest.
Yeah, I feel like a guest has been a good idea. I've had a couple players even mention why we don't have more guests on this show.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
Oddly enough, I don't exactly even know how it came up, but
we can very easily have a guest segment for sure.
Yeah.
Especially as things get leaner and greener here as the season progresses, barring some type of miraculous recovery.
Yeah, and I gotta do a little work on our potential. There has been floated the opportunity perhaps to take the Rip City Report multimedia and actually do one of the Trailblazers Courtside episodes as an episode of the Rip City Report. We're still hammering out the details on that. There's a lot of contracts involved, a lot of egos, a lot of I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed, but that might happen someday.
We're gonna have to be on top of our game much more than today if we do that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is too. I mean, we could talk, but it's the whole like, how do you know when you're supposed to go to commercial, or how do you?
They'll tell us in our ear.
Yeah. Well, you would hope so.
Yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself here. I probably shouldn't have even talked about that. No one cares.
You'll be fine. All right. Thanks for listening.
That's it.
Hey, sorry guys.
I'm sorry for listening. I'm sorry that
this is where the team is.
We promise to do better next week. I swear it's gonna be better.
Don't make
next
promises you can't keep.
No, I can keep that promise.
Oh
Joe.
yeah,
I agree. You should not make promises you can't keep, but I can keep that promise. This show is gonna be better next week. Period.
All right. As always, y'all. Thanks for listening. Follow us on Twitter. You can follow Casey at Seahold. You can follow me at Blazer Freeman. Please check out our and our good colleagues' content from Casey at blazers.com/forward-center and mine at OregonLive.com/blazers. We got about 6 weeks left. April 12th is the season finale. Enjoy it while it lasts, because once it expires, you'll be begging for games.
No, they'll be begging
June,
for draft coverage.
July.
Draft coverage this year is going to be on and popping, Joe. It's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. After not having draft to do last year, I'm looking forward to covering the draft this year. I really am. That's not me just trying to
drum up
to be a good employee. I really am looking forward to it.
I'm going to record that sentence that you just said, and I'm going to replay it in your ear. And
I like covering anything that people are very interested in.
Yeah.
People are very interested in it.
That's true. The draft is fun. The draft is fun. Okay, thanks again, guys. We'll talk to you again next week. Take care.
Bonzi Wells, what a handle. It's amazing what he do for the sport. Damon Stoudemire saves the day, a.k.a. Mighty Mouse. Gonna show all of you scrubs how to play. What a show. Why the Lakers even want it with us, you know.
No one's ready to deal with us.